You know, the headline that I told you was coming, the headline that said a 10-year-old abuse victim mandated to have the child bring the fetus to full term. Let me take it to Ohio. 10-year-old rape victim in Ohio was denied an abortion, sparking outrage online as many Republican-led states strip away reproductive rights following the Supreme Court's overruling of Roe v. Wade. Dr. Caitlin Bernard in Indianapolis received a call last Monday, 3 days after the court's ruling, 3 days. She received a call from a child abuse doctor in Ohio who had a 10-year-old girl in their office who was 6 weeks and 3 days pregnant, which means she was molested. But because of the new Ohio trigger law, due to Roe v. Wade being overturned, she was ineligible to receive an abortion in that state, according to a report from the Indianapolis Star. So let's go deeper into this madness, because remember, those on the right are telling you that this is all about protecting an unborn child. Damn it, it's not an unborn child, it's a fetus. That's what it is, right? There's more. The child, the actual 10-year-old living, walking, breathing child, the child was unable to receive an abortion in Ohio because the state bans the procedure after 6 weeks when fetal cardiac activity may be detected. Some Republican-led states banned abortions at that point, claiming that a heartbeat can be detected within that time frame. Now, I've explained this before. This whole heartbeat bill jazz coming from the right, inaccurate, not a medical derivative, totally antithetical to the truth, but they know how to brand it. They brand it really well to make you think, oh, wait a minute, that's a heartbeat. Let's call it the heartbeat bill. However, these so-called heartbeat bills or fetal heartbeat bans on abortion have faced criticism from actual medical experts, many of whom argue there is actually no heartbeat in 6 weeks. Rather, doctors can detect a flutter. There it is, a flutter in the region where the heart will eventually form. Additionally, many women and girls do not know they are pregnant at that point. I had another medical doctor break it down to me this way. They said, listen, when there's pulse or rhythm, that's just a biological dynamic. That's not a heartbeat, okay? Heartbeat actually comes later, the heart is formed later, but that's not the heartbeat. A ban has not taken in effect yet in Indiana, which meant the girl was able to travel, this 10-year-old child was able to travel to Dr. Bernard for the procedure. Other information about the child's case is unknown due to her age. Bernard told the Star that it's hard to imagine that in a few short weeks, we will have no ability to provide that care. Why? Because the law is changing in Dr. Bernard's state as well. North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein, a Democrat who has been critical of the Supreme Court decision, described laws banning the girl from being able to receive an abortion as, and I quote, insane. Insane. Direct quote from the AG of North Carolina. A 10-year-old victim of abuse denied an abortion in Ohio because she was 3 days past 6 weeks pregnant. This is insane. She's 10 years old. He tweeted that on Friday night. So let's talk about what Biden can do. A few things here. I'm glad to see that he's open to eliminating the filibuster. Simple move, by the way. I actually think maybe a couple of Republicans would join him in reference to the carve out. Eliminate the filibuster for the sake of restoring a woman's right to choose right here in this country. The carve out, that's one option. Another option is launch a campaign against the corporations. Corporations who have decided to say no to a woman's right to choose, launch a campaign against those corporations. Encourage every woman, everyone who supports a woman's right to choose, to stop shopping with those companies, to stop patronizing those agencies. There's more he could do. He could also create an atmosphere to pass legislation. Overwhelmingly, citizens of this country believe that a woman should have the right to choose. And he could also declare that all federal land is now a place allowable for at least one affordable option, absent from the laws of that state, separate from the laws of that state. And by the way, every state in America has significant federal territory, all right? Now, I know there's pushback on that. People will say, well, what about the Hyde Amendment? What about the Hyde Act? It prohibits this kind of thing from the federal government, not according to the reading of the Hyde Act. The Hyde Amendment effectively prevents federal funding from being used to pay for abortions. That's important to note. You cannot use federal funding to pay for abortions. There's an exception. Via any programs that are administered by the Department of Health and Human Services. So we're talking about a programmatic model. If Biden declared federal territory allowable for the use of a provider that does not violate the language of the Hyde Act. Now remember, what was my first story? A 10-year-old has been raped in Ohio. Ohio would basically make her a criminal, or the doctor who provided the service to abort the fetus a criminal as well. All right, the amendment sponsored by Representative Henry Hyde out of Illinois back in 1976. Remember, Roe v. Wade happened in 1973. And although it has never become a permanent law, Congress has renewed it annually ever since, attaching it as a rider to HHS appropriation bills. The only exceptions, think about this, the only exceptions under the Hyde Amendment are cases involving what? Rape and incest, or when a mother's life is in danger. My point to you is this: if we already had these options on federal territory inside of the states, the Hyde Act itself provides an exception to allow, in cases of rape and incest, the child can abort the fetus without penalty. Okay, that's what the Hyde Act says. Now, does that get us where we want to be? Of course not, but it's something. And that something isn't even being done. Adrienne, thoughts here?
You know, you're absolutely right in terms of that something not being done. The fact is that the federal government and Biden have a lot of power and options available if they wanted to create avenues for individuals and even children to access abortion care, which is health care, but they are not opening those avenues. And the thing is, we just came from an administration where we got to see members of the executive branch essentially bend and manipulate and bastardize the law to the extent they could to achieve the goals that they wanted. So you can't tell me that the Biden administration doesn't have those same avenues and alleys that they're unwilling to simply cross or to be a part of, in part because they're so busy trying to keep up these gentlemen's agreements and this sense of decorum, all while our democracy is being completely and totally unraveled. And we're seeing instances like this where you have a 10-year-old child who was raped, not being able to get care for herself when her body cannot necessarily sustain a pregnancy, nor should it be forced to.
Yeah, very well said.